Hello, everyone. Welcome to 32Soft's 2020 webinar series finale. I'm Denise, and with me is QAD and MRP expert Don Lindsey. Please know that everyone does connect to the webinar already muted, but you can type in any questions or comments at any time throughout the session. Enter them into the bottom where you should see a big red arrow pointing, and then during the Q&A, we'll address all questions in the order received. Also, as you exit the session, a very brief survey will pop up automatically. We only ask 2 questions and provide a field for comments. It's very quick, but very helpful, so we hope you will provide us with some feedback today. Finally, as soon as the replay of today's session is published, each of you will receive our Encore email. It will include a link to the replay and any questions and answers from today's session. And now, let's learn from instructor extraordinaire, Don Lindsey.
Good morning, and thank you, Denise, for that nice introduction. In today's environment, we hear so much about disruption, alignment, the effects of COVID, international upheaval. Today, we'd like to take a look at how we can use the functionality of QAD to help organizations deal with this turbulence. With the current circumstances of COVID-19, social issues around George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, deaths and others, supply chains are undergoing sometimes a complete reevaluation of their business processes of procurement and manufacturing. The media has been peppered with articles extolling how to address these changes in the supply chain. Such authors as Lisa Anderson, Alan Dunn, Eric Kimberlin have written of the need and processes for these changes. They see these trends as what does it mean for companies? How are we going to deal with China? What are we going to do with local suppliers? How do we minimize risk? What does it mean for 5G, strategic industries such as oil and gas and water, new traceability requirements, pricing models, supplier communication. So many changes are addressing our supply chains. Today, I'd like to cover 4 primary areas of QAD as it regards a possible reevaluation of our supply chains. I'd like to talk about master data, control files, items, bombs, etc. One of the biggest areas affected by supply chain restructuring are obviously our supply base, our vendors. So we'll look at purchase orders, schedules, price lists. Since we buy inventory, and that's what we use to build, we want to understand how inventory is affected by these changes. And our customers, they're being affected by this chaos just as we are. So we want to look at how we can deal with customer data, sales orders, schedules, etc. And what we produce and how we produce. So we'll talk about a little bit about work orders, schedules, MRP. Denise and I have put together a list of articles that we think pertinent to this process. We'll post that out on the website for your benefit. Many industries are undergoing existential change. The auto industry, for example. Single car has about 30,000 parts, counting all the little bunch bolts and screws, and some of these parts are made by the manufacturer, but majority are made by our supply chain. And so they have to think about environmental pressures, fuel dependencies, the rising use of card sharing, electric vehicles, the Chinese market, the self-driving cars. The electrical vehicle market is going to be huge over the next 3 to 5 years. You think about the electrical engine. It's only got 20 moving parts compared with nearly 2,000 parts in an internal combustion engine. So your electrical vehicle will probably need less maintenance, but there's going to be a lot less people employed in the auto industry. Not to mention the effect of electrical vehicles on the oil and gas industry. So huge changes in the auto industry, and similar industries are going under like changes. Mr. Biden, he's going to rejoin the Paris Agreement, the Green New Deal, sustainability, Mr. Biden wants to check the Chinese, their Belt and Road Initiative. He wants to put some more meat into the Made in America label. So there's all sorts of changes on the domestic side of supply chain. The Business for Social Responsibility points out that over the next 3 to 5 years, supply chains are going to have to understand and deal with the impacts of automation, regional sourcing hubs. Digitization is going to be huge. Supply chain transparency and visibility, smart planning and climate planning processes. So lots of changes face us out on the horizon. There's several things that you can do with the administration if you want to look at redoing your supply chain. QED is always trying to convince us to upgrade to EE, new production orders, channel islands, adaptive UX, all the changes from SE to EE. The cloud, don't be left behind. Think about the cloud over the next 3 to 5 years and what that means to you. There's several administrative areas that can contribute to better control. Security. Security with more and more people accessing data remotely, from where and how that access is taking place has become more important over the last year. So a reevaluation of your security setup can yield better and more user-friendly tools for your organization. How do I access databases? What do I do with menus, executables? What applications are on my system? Database, fields, and table access. And those of us that deal with Sarbanes-Oxley have concerns. There's browse collections and menu collections that can put data at the user's fingertips more quickly and easily. The whole question of roles and permissions. You may have set up roles and permissions originally when you implemented your system, but you may want to rethink how you've assigned those roles and who has access to what data. Configured screens, another great tool for making the users get at information easier. If you've ever been in a 7.1.1 or the RMA maintenance screens, you can know that there's lots of fields and frames. So you can streamline those. You can do auto next. You can set defaults. You can disable. You can who needs the tax frame. So lots of opportunities for enhancing that. We talked about the need for knowing who and how things are being accessed in our system. We also want to know who's changing data. They have the audit trail system and enhanced controls that can offer that. Electronic signatures. Paper transactions are typically how we do things now, but electronic signatures, they can tell you who signed and when they signed and where they signed. There's all sorts of tools out there. I just bought a new car for my wife, and everything that I had to sign with the DMV and AAA was on a electronic signature application. So accounting, I really don't have a lot of time to talk about accounting, but all of the areas of accounting need to be reviewed. Chart of accounts, financial reporting, shared sets, product lines, general ledger transactions. Senior management, if you are going to redo your supply chain, they need to have the accounting process able to mirror those changes and make decisions based on those. Data structures can be updated. Normally we've got what? Prod, train, dev, val, test. You may want to think about what you've done with those databases, how often they're updated. Tomcat, connection manager. I'm not an IT guy, but lots of things that can be done. Cloud is on the horizon. Be cautious. There's some limitations on cloud processes, but that is going to be one of the things you'll have to look at with the supply chain. Domains exist within databases. So what if you're going to expand into Europe or South America? You may want to think about changing your domain processes. Entities exist within domains, and you may have to think how you've laid those out. These are where you do business reporting, where you do taxes, generate balance sheets and income statements. Those may need to be changed as you progress with a re-look at the supply chain. Sites. This is one of the main areas that probably is going to change with new suppliers or supply chain restructuring. Sites, this is where you do inventory planning, availability, manufacturing methods, cost, sales purchasing data. So you may want to think about how you've named and set up those sites across your data. Locations, this is critical because this is your perpetual record. This is the quantity on hand that drives most of your operational data. So you may need to think about that. If you're going to deal with EE, we've got a new tool called the Business Relationship 36.1.4.3.1. This is a new repository for information about taxes, locations, general sorts of information. The address tab will let you set up tax information, other standard information. This is going to be shared by customers, suppliers, banks, end users. The general tab sets languages, domain restrictions, etc. And the default tab allows you to look at supplemental analysis codes, which help the general ledger analyze transactions if you're going to restructure the supply chain. Control files, we are all familiar with control files. In the EE version, they kind of split off some of the accounting functionality from the old supply chains, but control files determine how you're going to use the functionality in the system. You may have set them up originally, but you want to look at how they're configured for efficacy now as to how you operate. So if you restructure, you may need to relook at those. There are over 92 control files in the system. You should understand how all of the settings affect your ERP operational transactions and take a look. For example, MRP, you may want to increase the MRP horizon. You may want to take advantage of a longer or shorter order release horizon. You may want to include op-based yields in your MRP calculations. You may want to take advantage of dynamic time fencing. So you need to go through all of your control files at least yearly to understand what they are. Part numbers, another area that could take a look at. Many times your part number systems were developed many years ago, sometimes under false assumptions, or the guy who invented the part numbering scheme retired a long time ago and you tried to continue his logic with little success. So you need to look at your part numbering system. There's basically the concept of uniqueness of identification. I've seen so many times this violated. One part number, one thing, not lots of part numbers. ERP doesn't work well under those circumstances. 3 different types of part numbers: significant, non-significant, random. Usually Joe liked the significant part numbers, and those are very difficult to deal with. So you may think about renumbering part numbers. And always the 3 F's: form, fit, and function. If you can't use it with the current part number, you have to create a new one. And you do that with master data. So if you rethink your master data, you're going to go into the item master file 1.4.1, and then you've got all the other menu items which allow the security system to detail out areas such as accounting or planning or manufacturing engineering, so that they can update just those areas that they are responsible for. So that regards the roles and permissions setups. So the item master file, we talked about item numbers, units of measure I'll mention, descriptions. You may want to go back and look at how you described all of your parts. The 1.4.3, product lines. When product lines were first set up, I'm sure that the accountants set up the product lines for their own benefit, but it's an operational tool. Maybe you want to rethink how you're going to use product line for operations planning. If you do that, there's the 1.2.23 product line replacement. This allows you to change a part number or a group of part numbers changes all the sales orders, work orders on hand, and gives you a GL transaction that records that. So that can be very handy. Use it with caution. Make sure you test it, but it's a very effective tool. Design group, if you product change control, you can use the design group. Promo code, when you're dealing with a whole bunch of new suppliers, even customers, you're going to increase the use of price list functionality. So you might use the promo code. Item type allows you to sort and report various scenarios of supply chain impact. Status codes, this determines how you're going to handle particular parts with restricted transactions. So that may want to be looked at. Again, price break category with the increased use of price list functionality. The inventory data. With more control and granulation, you may want to think about having some controls, digital twins, Internet of Things. These all lend themselves to increased lot and serial traceability. Location types, making sure that you've got locations. Cold chain, we've all heard of that cold chain over the last couple of weeks and months. Pfizer, Moderna, all their vaccines are going to have to be tracked through the system, through the supply chain, to make sure that they don't violate that minus 95 degree temperature restriction. So you can use location type. You can also use the 1.15 item type attribute to assist in that. Purchase order and release status. You can respond quicker to the way that you receive and process work orders and purchase orders. Freight and shipping data. The better control you have getting product to and from customers, the better off your supply chain is going to be. Item planning. You may want to think about using time fence. That instills a control zone of stability into your scheduling process. MRP, I don't have time to talk about MRP. I've spent several webinars speaking of that, but order policies, POQ, FOQ, etc. How do you deal with that? That may want to be looked at. Probably one of the most important fields you've got in the item master file is safety stock. This is our primary guard against variation in the system. And there's a very scientific, mathematical way to approach that. Don't use rule of thumb, seat of the pants. I get so upset when I see everything with the same safety stock. You need to look at that and evaluate that on a regular basis. Suppliers. This is your primary supplier code. You may want to think about how you're scheming those, what your partner, what your systems are. A PO site. You may want to think about centralized purchasing if you're going to have increased number of sites. Purchase manufacturing system. This is where you make your make-buy decisions. Again, mathematically, if you track the fixed cost and variable costs, you can do a much better job of determining what you need to buy, what you need to make. Configuration type. If you've got that kind of product that lends itself to being assembled, and a lot of companies have that, you can set those up for either assemble to order on a work order or a kit at the shipping point. Manufacturing lead time, purchasing lead time. Those have to be as accurate as possible. Instead of having manufacturing lead time at 30 days, you may want to have MRP calculate that off the routing run and setup times. So you can do that. The purchasing lead time needs to be updated on a regular basis. Again, no seat of the pants. You want to do the actual lead time as close as possible to planned lead time. Available promise. This tool allows you to increase customer satisfaction because you can actually promise customers that they're going to get their parts when they want them. Op-based yield percentage. This helps MRP plan more accurately, so you've got a better control over the system. If you've got new sites, new locations, new domains, you may want to consider EMT, Enterprise Material Transfer. This takes care of the sales order to purchase order receipt, sales order shipment. All of those transactions are handled automatically through that EMT processing process. New distribution center, new networks. DRP is the answer. So you will want to set up network codes and transportation codes for those new DRP functions. Alternates in routings and bombs can lend increased flexibility to your operations and subcontracting processes. If you used multiple sites, which a lot of us do, you want to make sure that your 1.4.16, 1.4.17, and 1.4.18 are giving the correct definitions of those parts in those sites, and they're in concert with what has been set up in the 1.4.1 item master maintenance. Item cost. Item cost is paramount to any ability to change or analyze the supply chain. We normally set up a standard cost on a yearly basis, sometimes on a quarterly basis, and we use that to measure the actuals and measure variance against that. The minimum variance is what we want to plan for, and I'll reference you to the webinar I gave last year on QAD variances and how you can handle that. There's the 5 elements of cost: material, labor, overhead, burden, and subcontract. But you can set up any number of cost elements. I worked with one company. We had to send royalties to a company that we were using their technology, and we set that up in the standard cost. Every time we sell it, the system automatically took care of us for us. So the 1.4.9, you set up your standard cost, price, tax status cost. This is what generates the general ledger. As I said, there's the 5 elements of standard cost, anything else you want, and cost set functionality, another tool you may want to look at in terms of creating cost sets for a budget, cost sets for next quarter, cost sets for last year. So cost set functionality is another great tool. You then roll up your routings. You may want to include yields. You may want to have QAD calculate the lead time, make your MRP more accurate, so you can check that little roll-up lead time box. And then finally, your standard costs are set up at the subassembly and the end product level by doing your 13.12.13. So considering product lines, product structure, formulas, planning data, that's going to give you your best tool to do analysis. Other functions in the item master file: unit to measure. Everything we have in on hand is based upon the stocking unit to measure, but there's many things that we buy from our vendors, subcontracting, where they're stocking it or packaging it in other units of measure. You can do unit of measure conversion, and QAD will automatically take care of those processes. So this better gives you control over those transactions. The 1.1.5, the 1.1.1 item inventory status and item status. This controls how you're going to deal with parts and quantities in stock. And you can use restricted transactions, so you can nail down exactly how, according to a particular status code, an item is going to be handled in the system. So that may be something you want to look at. Bills of material. The bills of material are the basic tool of the system. This is your definition of the product, critical to your operation. You need to measure it on a constant basis. Make sure that product structure master and the BOM master are equal to what you're actually using out on the floor and issuing to subcontract or work orders. That BOM was invented back in the 1960s by IBM, bill of material processor. It's still the primary tool that we use for both costing and MRP scheduling, so it has to be accurate. The 13.1 product structure code maintenance, you can have alternate codes, and then you build your product structure in 13.5 and 15.5. Parent, component, you've got reference codes. You can use start and end effectivity dates to help you with MRP. This is probably the most important value in your product structure. your quantity per. You can have various kinds of structures, alternates, documents, planning. There's a start and stop effectivity date calculations. You can put remarks. You can have scrap, lead time, operations. You can name sequences. You can have forecast, and you can do backward explosions in the bill of material. 13.15, alternate structures is where you relate the current to another structure so that you can have the same item using different sets of components. Adds to your flexibility of the supply chain. In 1.4.7 and 17, you can use those alternates in the planning system, and then MRP and costing will use those alternate routings to plan for your structure. You can use 13.19, item substitutions. You can substitute. The more substitutions you have, the more flexible your operation is. Lead time. Planning lead time has to be equal to actual lead time. It can be your friend or your foe, depending on how you use it. Lead times need to be measured and updated at least quarterly. I get so upset when I go in and I see the lead time in the item master file on the PT master, and the last time it was changed was 5 years ago. That needs to be updated almost on a monthly basis. Needs to be as humanly close as possible to plan equal actual lead time. There's a home for everything in QAD. Purchase lead time, manufacturing lead time, queue, rut, setup. So you've got a place to do that, and it needs to be accurate. Supplier data. Of all the areas in the system, the suppliers are probably where you can get into the most trouble. You need to stay in close contact with your buyer to the sales managers, especially for those critical product materials that you buy. Read the news, make telephone calls, understand tariffs, currency, contracts, make friends. In these days of upheaval, we must have excellent relationships with our suppliers. They are partners in crime. It takes a group of highly skilled and dedicated individuals to do purchasing. I was a purchasing manager. It's a very, very intensive job because we have to go out and select vendors. Now that China is not going to be available due to tariffs or whatever, you need to go out and look all over the world for new vendors in the supply chain. You can, if you've looked at it, supplier performance. You can use supplier performance in QAD to help you with that selection process and document why you chose those particular new vendors. 36.4.3.1, this is the business relationship create again, and that's going to allow you to create the 20.1.1 supplier create. So this is where you're going to create the suppliers that you're going to develop, and this needs to be constantly updated. There's accounting information that you profiles, supplier codes, price tabs. You can set credit terms and invoice statuses. You can define banks. You can define the FAS codes, the supplemental analysis fields, tax information for global tax, and you can write comments, books of comments about the suppliers, why you chose them, what they do, who they are, etc. In 2.3.1, you've got supplier data maintenance. It's the old SE, but you still need to go in and validate that old SE data so that it can be used by the operational side of the business. 1.19, supplier cost data. This gives us the relationship between your item and their item. This can be set up to have their supply chains, their manufacturing, the price list, the quote information, a price, date, and quantity. If you've got that, that can automatically default into purchase orders or supplier schedules as the system may need. Supplier pricing. Now that you're going to create new suppliers, you want to define your relationship with them primarily based on what? Cost and price. So you need to have a price list. You can do that either in amount price. You can do it with discounts. You can do it with markups. You can do it with a straight value of a price list. So you're going to set up a price list for each new supplier that you have in the system. Requisitions. Requisitions, major area for SOX compliance and corporate purchasing. Financial controls require approval of all purchase orders. I see it. Don't let Bill Gates be your purchase requisition system. Don't use it. It's very simple to set up. You set up your requesters, you set up your approval levels, you set up and then email, approve, deny, reroute, route to the highest level. When it's approved, then it goes to the buyer, and the buyer then can create a purchase order from that. If you use GRS, Global Requisition System, you can use that. It has vertical, horizontal, product line, lots of tools that you can use to set up that requisition control. Here's that one of those 36.9. There's 3 in particular. This is where you set up the accounting controls for requisitions. Then you set up your approval levels, and you go off and you create requisitions. The purchase order, this is the primary tool that we use for our communication with our suppliers. This is our legal contract. We define the items that we're going to purchase, the items, the cost, using price list, units of measure, set those as you're going to buy them, and the trailer then helps you communicate with the suppliers to the status of the purchase order, whether it's taxable, non-taxable, what the order revision is, etc. Now, if you have the opportunity, purchase orders are fine, but they're discrete. Supplier schedules, on the other hand, were developed for the auto industry, and these are period-oriented schedules, which you might think about using. Purchase orders, single orders, you can do receipts, one time only. Blanket orders, I'm not a real fan of blanket orders, but you can use them if you want. They basically create purchase orders. Supplier schedules, on the other hand, offer much more flexibility to place orders with suppliers. So you need to think about which products you're going to use, what your procedures are, what kind of reporting accounting needs, the supplier needs, and then the supplier customer expectations. So you need a lot of interface between you and the supplier for that. To define your items, your supplier records, your supplier calendars, your scheduled order, your MRP percentages, those all need to be set up. So you use 5.5.1.13, your schedule order maintenance. You create the schedule order. You define the lines of what you're going to do. Then you can define the schedule parameters right within the schedule order. You can schedule based on days, weeks. You've got fabrication and raw material authorization horizons you can use. You can define transportation days, shipment information. So that schedule order maintenance is very effective way to handle your interface. Subcontracting. Now that we're using and processing through our suppliers more and more, using their value add capabilities, you're going to probably use supplier subcontracting a lot more. Very simple process. Set up your routers. Lots of different scenarios you can use. You set up your routers. You create the work order to either accumulate parts or help ship parts. Then you cut the purchase order to pay them for the value add, and then you process. So there's more attention to processing, updating dates, receipt transactions gives you much more control over that supplier process. Inventory, the perpetual record, quantity on hand, needs to be 100% accurate, because this is where scheduling begins, is your quantity on hand. And if you're going to add sites and locations, that's going to tell you that you need more control over your quantity on hand. QAD has a perpetual record, the 3.2, inventory detail by item browse, and your 3.21.2 transaction by item history. This is your continuously updated quantity on hand and its audit trail. Transaction control, you may need to think about creating some new transactions or modifying the way that you use transactions in QAD. There's the basic questions: what, when, where, how, why, and who. But you may need now to consider a lot data, expiration information. Country of origin is becoming much more. We talked about the cold chain data that needs to be accessed, the hazmat designations. And if you choose to implement other functionality, consignment, EMT, DRP, customer supplier schedules. Basically, two ways to increase that accuracy up to 100%, do cycle counting, or if you don't do cycle counting, you need to do 3.16, which is your physical inventory. Any way you look at it, you got to have accurate information. Departments. Department is how you organize the system. We talked about this a little bit. Originally, it was set up for accounting, but you may want to do some capacity planning. So you may want to relook at the way that you've got departments set up. Help you define how you're going to analyze transactions within the work environment. Work centers are where you do work. So as you have increased levels of activity in the supply chain for subcontracting, you also may want to rethink how you've got your shop load out. Internal and external routing information, routing setup and runtime, operation sequences, what work orders. These should be reviewed at least quarterly. Work orders. Work order is part number, quantity, and date. There is the item type. You can have standard, rework, expense types. You can track the status of the work order through planned, MRP, firm, released, closed. You can determine the type of bill or routing that you're going to use. A word of caution, you've got your new EE production order, which is a combination of discrete work orders, kanbans, flows, advanced repetitive. 16.13.1, you can actually modify the work order itself, allocate parts that are required. You can use 13.13 or 16.13.30 work order router maintenance to make the router specific to either a subcontract process or a internal work order process. There's the new master scheduling workbench, production scheduling workbench, which is in E, which basically combines a whole bunch of different menus into one tool that makes it easier for planners to do planning, capacity planning, etc. Product change control. Things always change in manufacturing. There's, by definition, a state of flux. New items, error corrections, modifications. QAD gives you 1.9, which allows you to create product change requests, product change orders, approval levels, communications with emails, implementation, and incorporation. So there's a whole series of activities. I've talked about this in previous warehouse in webinars. You've got groups, routing slips, etc. If you don't use the 1.9, there's always Arena or Agile or some of the other, but you must have product change control. So this allows you to incorporate, release, distribute, and implement changes out onto the shop floor. Advanced repetitive, another great tool. Advanced repetitive cumulators can do just about everything that a work order can do, only quicker and easier. You set up your demand, sales orders, gross requirements, etc. You schedule with MRP, repetitive scheduling. You set your requirements, create repetitive pick lists. You actually produce the product. You report based on backflush and parts finished through finished goods, and the system just records that. You can use the advanced repetitive workbench. You can add quantities and due dates right in the workbench. Labor, you can do auto backflush, standard, non-standard labor, report downtime with reason codes. You can backflush material, modify the backflush, scrap it operations. You can transfer WIP, reject or rework at operations. You can value inventory. You can see the value of inventory in the work order itself. You can just WIP quantities. Accounting's got a much more comprehensive look at cost. They can view variances, post variances at once. Kanban, invented by Mr. Taguchi. This is a way to increase flexibility, increase productivity, both for you and the suppliers. The Kanban cycle basically says that you create cards, you define how those cards are going to be used, you size the cards for tech time, etc. You schedule, you then manage the cards by dispatching the cards and processing the cards. So a very, very effective tool to handle the Kanban activities. Consigned inventory. Consignment, basically, you have parts you give to your customer. They only get paid when they sell it, or suppliers give you and you only pay them when you use it. Both customer consignment and supplier consignment. So you only pay for what you use. Streamlines accounting, manages inventory, do the receipts. However, you're now going to defer the voucher activity. It satisfies MRP, and you can have multiple types of usages defined. So you can use either supplier or consumer customer consignment activities. You do have to consider new inventory locations. You're probably going to have new inventory accounts, and you're going to have some changes to the way that you vouch your product. Barcoding. You really need to barcode. If you're not barcoding now, you really need to do it. Freedom, Automated, Eagle, Radley, lots of others. If you implement barcodes, you're going to have a better supply chain activity. Customers are the other side of the suppliers. Sometimes harder to figure out which one is more important, but I used to work for a controller that constantly drummed into our heads, if you don't sell it, then everything we do in accounting and manufacturing is for naught. So the customers are pretty important. Again, you're going to set up your business relationship. There are 13 different things that need business relationships. I'll talk about that in April. You set up in 27.20.1.1 the customer information, just very similar to the way you do with 28.20.1.1 supplier. Then you've got your 2.1.1, which is the same as 2.3.1 on the supplier side, needs to be set up for verification and activity on the operations side. The 16.1 allows you, just like the 1.9 or 1.16 allows you to use the same as 1.19, your customer's number on their sales orders, invoices, etc. And then you're going to have to make sure that your customer calendars are updated on a regular basis to make sure that your planning is as accurate as possible. Sales orders is how you record sales information in the system. At the line level, you've got all the details of cost, data, due dates, etc. Trailer information, any miscellaneous non-sales activity, freight, customs duties, etc. Those should all be as accurate as possible. And then because the sales order is so critical to the way that you schedule the system, you need to have work instructions set for both the header data and the line data and how it affects the MRP. Sales order processing is similar to the supplier pricing. You've got the ability to do analysis codes, either by customer or item. You can set amount types. You can set quantity types. You can set how things are combined, either exclusive or not. You've got start and end effectivity dates with supplier price. So you create a supplier because, again, that is a primary way that you're going to communicate with your customer on the prices that you're going to pay to him. Customer schedules. For those customers that you've got a close relationship, you may want to think about using customer schedules in a contract to the discrete sales orders. The customer sends you a schedule. You create a required ship schedule. You run MRP. You ship the product, and then they receive the product. It's a little complex, but well worth the effort. This is the primary way that the automotive industry functions. Shipping Better control of shipping increases customer service. I just ordered this from a company up in Oxnard, new iPhone holder. It came with 9 things: hardware, plastic holders, documents, barcode labels, shipping instructions. This all had to be planned, picked, and packaged and shipped to me to make me happy and want to come back for more. So the better you are at shipping, the more happier your customers are going to be. You can use kit or assembly processes. Use 8.1 and 8.13 to either configure it at the point of shipment, or you can actually build assemblies to customer requirements. Shipping, you can either use the standard shipping process or the advanced shipping process. With the old standard 7.9.13, 7.9.15, and then your print and post. If you used advanced shipping, you've got the 7.9.1 pre-shipper automatic, 7.9.2 your pre-shipper shipper workbench, and 7.9.5 your pre-shipper shipper combination confirmation. In EE, they've combined 7.13.3 and 7.13.4 into one function now. So with 7.9.2, you can create the contents and the structure of the shipment. You can create hierarchies. You can combine shippers and pre-shippers, extreme functionality. Forecasting. Forecasting starts off at the top. The whole system begins with sales and operations planning. If anybody has not read about Dick Lynn, go into the internet and read about Dick Lynn. This is our ability to project in the future, and the 21 or 22.1 forecast maintenance is a primary tool we can use that for. We can use 22.7 supply chain restructuring, or restructuring is going to give us more opportunities to make forecasts of our budgets for last year, for this year, for this month, for R&D. So you can use many of the standard calculations for forecasting: best fit, exponential smoothing, regression analysis. You can even do your own self-defined process. And then finally, capacity requirements planning. You really need to plan capacity and control capacity. So once you've defined your sales and operations plans, your forecast, your master schedule, bills of material, departments, routings, you can create a load against the process. That's basically the amount of work that can be done in a period, and it should be done at each level in the closed loop system. You remember, a plan that exceeds capacity will not get built and will build inventory. So very simple. You determine your capacity availability. You explode the planned release orders. You sum them up against a resource, and then you resolve the differences. Now, once the plan has been leveled, it constantly needs to be adjusted due to seen and unforeseen circumstances. So you can use the 24-23 department load or the 24-14 MRP summary load to get a picture of what that capacity is. Service management. Service management is one of the few ways that manufacturing companies can add to revenue. It requires a mindset change because, for example, a price list is the price of servicing, not the price itself. It's end user oriented as opposed to customer or ship to, and it begins not with manufacturing, but with the shipment of the part back to you as the manufacturer. So customer revenue, digital twins, field service, cold chain, warranties, all sorts of opportunities exist for the use of that service and support module. So the whole process of looking at the supply chain and reevaluating, Q80 and 32Soft give you a lot of tools that allow you to do a thorough restructuring of your supply chain. So we've talked about master data, suppliers, items, inventory, purchase orders, work orders, customer data, forecasting. Make Q80 work for you. Q80 is hard, and these days of great change, it takes an even more concerted team effort to ensure understanding, accuracy, timeliness, and consistency in production and execution. If there are any questions, please key them in. I'll give it back to Denise. And thank you for your attention.
Excellent as always, Don. Thank you. We do get a lot of questions about training, and yes, we are happy to help with training needs. So just give us a call or shoot an email and we can get the training conversation going. As Don just mentioned, here are two of our first webinars in the new year. We kick off our 2021 series with the QAD dates, how data is driven. That one is on January 20th. And then in February, as Don also mentioned, we'll cover supply chain control towers. We do hope that you will join us. And also, I wanted to thank you, Dwayne, for asking that question, because as we start our planning, we do go back and consider input and requests that we receive throughout the year or more recent months in particular. So thank you for that. If anybody else has any suggestions as well, as we close out, remember there will be an automatic, maybe 60-second survey. Feel free to add in the comments any topics that you'd like to have us cover in the future. All of our informational webinars are intended, of course, to impart new knowledge and or provide assistance with challenges. And 2020 sure presented a plethora of those.
Well, there's an understatement. Yes.
Yeah, right.
2020 has been quite a year. Quite a year.
So while not always easy to do, we should try to always remember this year in particular that while the challenges are great, so are the opportunities. Sometimes we just have to look or try a little harder to find the opportunities, but they're usually there somewhere.
And again, QAD has got so many tools that can make your ERP endeavors so much easier. Just lots and lots of functionality that exists out there that I'm sure a lot of us have not explored. So yes, test and experiment and make MRP work for you.
Absolutely. That does, I just checked, and there are no additional questions, so we will go ahead and wrap up. This concludes our 2020 webinar series, and thank you all so much for your time today. We really appreciate you taking it out to join us. Mm-hmm. And from all of us at 32 Soft, have a safe and happy holiday season, and keep well, everyone.
And we'll see you in January. You have a wonderful, wonderful holiday.
Yes, and thank you, Don.
Thanks,
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.